Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I want to talk a little bit about Dragon Age and how I lost interest in it. It didn't have to do with the Veilguard. That's the newest game that's come out when I'm recording this, and is one that's gotten the most attention because it's full of like woke moralizing and like trans ideology stuff, and the gameplay is also really boring, and the visual aesthetic has decayed into being something quite cartoonish. That's the main criticisms I'm seeing, but I had never really considered buying it, even though Dragon Age Origins is one of my top games, one of my favorite games of all time, because my interest in the franchise just really decayed over those next two games that they released, Dragon Age 2 and then Dragon Age Inquisition. Why did my interest wane? There's a bunch of reasons. They changed the gameplay is a big one. So the gameplay got really dumbed down. Dragon Age Origins had gameplay that's more like Baldur's Gate. So if you like Baldur's Gate 3, Dragon Age Origins is probably right up your alley. But I don't know who decided somewhere along there that people would have thought that strategic tactical combat was boring, and so they replaced it with more action-oriented combat that continued to get more and more boring, in my opinion, as we went through it. There was no longer challenging tactical encounters. It was more run into an area, people attack, you kill them, you wait for the second wave in Dragon Age 2, and then you kill them, and that's it. And then Dragon Age Inquisition, wandering around different maps, aggroing goblins and killing them or whatever, killing spiders here and there. It became just a lot more boring, right, the gameplay. So by the time I had done Inquisition, I was like, okay, I'm not really interested in this anymore. Same thing kind of happened with Mass Effect. But the big reason, the story, I really loved, Ferelden, and I loved the setting of Dragon Age in that first game. But over time, the story stopped being about a heroic struggle. In the first game, Dragon Age Origins, it's a heroic story. It's a story about heroism in a very dark and gritty world. People tend to focus on the setting. It's dark and gritty, and not on the dark and gritty setting makes the heroism more heroic, right? You have the Grey Wardens are desperately trying to assemble an army to defeat the Archdemon. You even have something really big where you can make the final sacrifice with your character at the end. You can choose to kill the Archdemon yourself and have the Archdemon's soul enter into you and kill you, and that obliterates the Archdemon. So you can make a final sacrifice and sacrifice your character for the greater good. That's a major heroic act. And everything that you do in that is contributing towards the resolution of that final conflict. It begins with the conflict of the Archdemon and it ends with it. So it is a great example of classic storytelling. We move on to Dragon Age 2 and there's no conflict, right? What's the conflict of Dragon Age 2, guys? What's the plot goal? What are we wanting to happen? What are we wanting Hawk to do? There's nothing for him to do. He arrives at the city and just wanders around doing adventures until the game ends. And each time they do it, you have the narration where it's like, he never would have gone into the deep roads. It's like, okay, but what does that have to do? Are we ever going to figure out why any of this matters? The answer is, in the last mission, the church is evil. You're going to have that. That's the reveal. So, that's what you get, right? You just get a lack of conflict. And the same thing with Dragon Age Inquisition. It takes hours and hours of play before you figure out why you're doing anything. And if the gameplay is not interesting enough to pull you through that bad story, the story is not going to keep you around. So the story got worse and worse with each iteration. Main thing is that it stopped being about heroics and heroic actions. You would think Dragon Age 2, main character guy, he's probably heroic. And it kind of is. I mean, it's somewhat like, it's better than Dragon Age Inquisition, but it's more like heroic fiction and like, you have to do a heroic quest. And, it's like a bunch of little short stories. So it's okay in that regard, but Dragon Age Inquisition just was like, it felt like too Game of Thrones inspired, like it was all about like nihilistic politics, nothing matters, and morality's gray, and that's not how it was in the first game. Yes, there are moral choices you have to make. Are you going to side with the Templars? Are you going to side with the werewolves or the elves? Which one are you going to pick? I picked the werewolves, by the way. I thought it would be cool to have a werewolf army. Turns out it doesn't matter whether you pick the elves or the werewolves. It just doesn't matter for the last mission. But it only matters to you that you're just like engaged in that moral choice, that you're engaged in the story. giving you the player that choice gives you that engagement. But you understand that that's all contributing towards the resolution of a conflict that just isn't present in the other games. A lot of people will look at Dragon Age Veilguard and be like, okay, yeah, it's definitely jumped the shark. I think it jumped the shark with like Inquisition. But, you know, with Veilguard, it's like it's going to moralize you. It's going to lecture you about trans stuff, this and that. And then they'll tell you, hey, the gay stuff was always there from the beginning. It's like, yeah, but number one, they didn't beat you over the head with it because it was about how the player explored their companions and what they chose to do. If they chose to have a gay relationship, then that's what they did. And if you talked to Leliana, you might find out she had a relationship with a woman before. Okay, that's just who her character was, right? It wasn't, she didn't stop and give you a lecture about gay rights or something in the middle of a dark medieval fantasy. It was just kind of part of the characters and part of the universe. So having like little trans lectures and stuff is definitely more than they had in the original. But the truth was all that stuff was there in the original, but you tend to be more forgiving about like the presence of little woke things in that universe because the story was good and because one of the reasons the story was good is they didn't beat you over the head with those things. So yes, there was gay stuff from the beginning, but it's not like how it is now. And more importantly is that there was an actual plot, an actual conflict, and actual heroic acts. You get a lot more involved as a player if you feel like there is something big to be done. And you get more involved with the story as a reader if you feel like there's a real heroic action that has to be taken in order to solve the conflict. You tend to like the characters a lot more. Most of the biggest examples of fiction that you can think of outside of games involve heroic acts, whether it's Harry Potter or it's Lord of the Rings or it's Conan the Barbarian. There's a big obstacle that has to be overcome, and there has to be some goal that you are striving towards. Whether it's killing Thulsa Doom, or it's blowing up the Death Star in Star Wars, or it's throwing the ring into Mount Doom, or it's killing the Archdemon in Dragon Age Origins. You have that big conflict. So yeah, by the time this came around, I didn't care that much because it had really stopped being about heroes struggling against darkness in a gritty and very dark and grimdark world, and really became more what like grimdark fiction tends to be about now, which is like a bunch of morally gray people flailing about without any real intent towards what they're doing, no real desired outcome for the story. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I would love to have your thoughts on Dragon Age, not just Dragon Age Veilguard, but just Dragon Age in general. Dragon Age Inquisition really was not a very good game, in my opinion, even though it won Game of the Year. It had some really awful gameplay elements that, I just mentioned, like the mission tables and that kind of, and the wandering around, clicking herbs. It just really wore me down with its tedium. But I realized that I didn't like any of the characters. None of the characters were likable. The story didn't really go anywhere. So it's one of those things like, which character did you romance? I didn't romance any characters because I hated all of them in Dragon Age Inquisition. Honestly, like Dragon Age 2, I don't remember. I think I romanced the elf. I don't remember, but like I think it was the elf. In Dragon Age Origins, people will have discussions like, oh yeah, I always romanced Leliana, or I did Morrigan, or I did Alistair, right? I romanced him, or Severin, which one did you, I don't think you could romance the old mage lady. I don't know if I ever tried that. I don't think you can. But those characters had a lot to them, so you were more interested in what they had to say and where they'd been and what they did. And like the characters even in Dragon Age 2, there were some super boring characters. I don't care what you say. And by Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm like, none of these characters are likable at all. I don't care about anything or why they care about anything, and I don't really know why I should care about anything in this conflict either. So yeah, that gradual decay. So I can only expect, given what BioWare's done over the last 10 years, that Veilguard was going to be just another step below that. And I think when they announced it as like Dreadwolf, I was like, that's going to suck. Dreadwolf is a cool name. That's a cool name, but given their track record, are they going to conjure up some characters you care about? Probably not. Are they going to have a main conflict that you care about solving? Probably not. Is it still going to be in the same dark, gritty world? Turns out not. I expected they would continue with the darkness. Nah, they cartooned it up a bit and decided to lecture you about transgenderism and stuff like that. I don't know. You leave me your thoughts on that decay. Did you buy Dragon Age Veilguard? All I've seen from it are negative reviews. I haven't seen a single positive review in my sphere, other than like the obviously the magazines throw out 90 plus reviews to anybody that releases a AAA game. Leave me your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what you guys think about that. I hadn't planned on buying it. Maybe I'll buy it one day at a discount just to kind of check it out, but probably not. Anyway, leave me your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. My Patreon is also linked down below. You get a book every month as part of that membership, and you get a free book right when you join. Keys to Prolific Creativity, my creativity manual. And you get to read all the transcripts of all the live writes, which is right now like 2 extra books, including one pretty long epic book. So check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great one.